Now we're going to start with the rest of finish the rest of the chapter. So this is chapter 22, a long-awaited announcement. There arrived from Horace a special urgent edition of Marrow Fair newsletter. There would be the next morning a convening of all the vendors because Mr. Marrow intended to address his market. Did that mean I'd finally see him? Lily Velasco's eyes were merry when I asked, I'm in a manner of speaking, how often do you see him? She dug in the pockets of her slouchy jacket. He's pretty hands off, and I keep him in the loop. She produced a wide phone and babbled it. Encrypted messages. He keeps the bank account full. What more can you ask for? Wandering the workstation, I heard rumors. Mr. Marrow was moving the market to Los Angeles, to Tokyo. He was shutting it down. He had run out of money. He was being pursued by SEC, the Yazuka, the Department of Health. This last possibility seemed to me most plausible. In the early morning, an hour before the preview was set to begin, all of us gathered in the lemon blue. Some loitered among the trees, others sat at the long picnic table. I found a seat with Orly, Naz, and Janamitra. With Jana, slumped head propped up by one hand, her cheeks smooshed, eyes half lidded, she looked utterly spent. Belasco had wheeled an enormous TV out to face the long picnic table fine and was now fiddling with the laptop at Naz's coffee bar, patching her phone into the sound system. The TV glared bright, basic blue, the words no signal migrating slowly across it. Mr. Marrow wasn't going to be here at all. He lives in China, Ollie whispered. It's already night time there. Nas looked dubious. No, he's here with us. He lowered his voice to a hiss. Do you see Horace anywhere? He's Horace. Okay, folks, Velasco called out. The depot soundtrack went quiet and was replaced with the buzz of a phone line. At the same time, the TV showed a painted still life, a feast set up on pockmarked table with a deep blue curtain hanging inexplicably behind it. On the table were a heel of bread and a bowl of plums. A curved knife protruded from a rump of cheese. On a bright platter there was a whole fish, its mouth frozen in an eternal yawp. Everything in the scene gleamed as if lacquered. A voice boomed out of the speakers. I haven't met all of you, the voice said, but I've tasted everything you have to offer. Its tone was deep, digitally disguised. The long space smeared it with echoes. It was as if the concourse itself was speaking to us. This was the voice of Mr. Marrow. As for his face, with every syllable the fish in the painting moved its tiny mouth. I have gathered you here for a long awaited announcement. The juxtaposition, the booming voice, the tiny fish, was weird and hilarious. I looked around. No one was smiling. We have been here for over a year. Lily Velasco opened the doors and wheeled in the lemon trees. Some of you joined shortly after. Others have only been here for a few weeks. We have been running previews all summer, and I know most of you are wondering when do we open to public? Mummers of assent. I'd been more than busy enough serving the customers who showed up for the previews, but others were apparently ready to reach a larger market. There is a great realignment coming, the fish in tote. It will be equal to the upheaval of 1950s. You have heard me say this before. In those years, the entire experience of eating in America was remade. Packaging, refrigeration, the interstate highways, you can trace it all back. These systems were invented by particular people at particular times in particular places. The fish paused. Time's like now. Its glittering eyes scanned back and forth. Places like this. Another pause. We can build a new system. The shiver of pleasure that ran through the assembled vendors was so intense I felt it like a rattling gust. They believed the fish. The fish was their prophet. On both sides they failed us, the fish said. Of course, we know about the industrialists, their corn syrup and cheese products, their factory farms ringed by rivers of blood and shit. blazing bonfires of disease barely contained by antibiotic blankets. These are among the most disgusting scenes in the history of this planet. Murmurs of agreement and apprehension at that. But on the other side, the organic farms, the precious restaurants, these are toy supply chains, farm to table, they say. Well, when you go from farm to table, you leave a lot of people out. The crowd was silent. I think more poorly of these than I do of the industrialists because they know better. They know it's all broken. And what do? They plant vegetables in the backyard. The fish would get along with Andre. So that leaves us. Wait, was the fish? The doors of the Marrow Fair opened to the public not this Wednesday but the next. The vendors exploded with agitation and excitement. That's too soon, someone cried. Is there a plan for parking? Asked someone else. I think we need a plan for parking. The fish closed its mouth, lidded its eyes, and the painting was still. The TV went blue again, and after a moment, Naz's soundtrack resumed. There were whoops and groans, smiles and nods, high fives that smacked the branches of the lemon trees. Across the picnic table, Jenna looked stricken. To no one in particular, she said, I'm not ready yet. Chapter 23 Quitting. The Marrow Fair was happening for real, and soon my two jobs would not coexist so comfortably. Lily Velasco expected the market's foot traffic to equal the ferry buildings eventually. That meant thousands of people a day. It was time to choose. I visited General Dexterity's website. The Vitruvian 3 was calmly listed for sale at $40,000 or 48 with a 2 year support package. My salary was hefty, but my Caprillo street rent was commensurate. However, I spent basically nothing on food, transportation, healthcare, or entertainment. So after a year in San Francisco, my savings account had swollen to a little over $10,000. Employment at General Dexterity carried with it a small allotment of stock options, and of those, a quarter had vested and were officially mine. The company was still privately held, almost entirely by Andre, so I couldn't sell them directly, but there was a standing offer to impatient Dexters from a pottery prince who would buy our options at a slight discount. When I heard about this, it seemed breathtakingly exotic, possibly illegal, but the cold eyed rats all shrugged. Apparently, every tech company had a prince waiting in the wings. I cashed out my options, which brought my total to $37,000. I almost had enough to buy the Vitruvian outright, but mindful of the need to also eat and pay rent, I decided to seek additional financing. I explained it to first to Lily Velasco, just like he thought Jenna's, just like he bought Jenna's sequencer, I said, and her subscription to the microbe thing. How much are we talking about? I told her, and Velasco nodded slowly. I'll check. Later, she appeared at my workstation. She watched the Vitruvian work for a moment. $40,000, really? The cost is mainly in the pressure sensors, I said. They have 24-bit resolution and the sample rate. Anyway, they're expensive. Velasco initiated a call, switched her phone to the speaker mode, and placed it on the ping pong table. In another moment, the modulated voice of Mr. Marrow squawked through the little speakers. He wasted no time with the preamble. The problem, as I see it, that you have done the crucial work here in my market. I should add, as an employee of another company. Your employer owns that work, correct? So, what does my investment get me? I'm quitting General Dexterity. It was my first time I'd said it out loud. I felt as renegade as Bio with his restaurant. There's so much more to do, so many skills knives, foods, processors, frying pans, the arm could reach right into the oil. There's a marketplace for ARM OS extensions, and I'm going to sell kitchen skills. Mr. Maru was silent. Then I heard a modulated sound that might have been a laugh. I looked at Velasco and mouthed, Is he laughing? Mr. Marrow composed himself. I don't understand half of what you just said, which makes me think you might be onto something. Keep your savings. I'll buy the robot in exchange for 20% of whatever this is going to be. The modulated voice was silent a moment. Are you sure this is what you want? I was sure. Velasco cut the check. Louis, make it work. The phone went silent. Until that moment, I hadn't realized how much I care about the opinion of an anonymous benefactor who sometimes inhabited the body of a painted fish, but I did. At general dexterity, Peter did not seem very surprised. We'll miss you, Control. We'll miss you on Control, he said, and I know the guys at the slurry table will miss you too. Have you tried the latest formulation? Revision G Mark 5, I guess. The glycemic index is unreal. I ducked into the cafeteria to reassure Chef Kate that I would keep her supplied with sourdough, even though I was leaving the company. In the kitchen, I found her robot arm wheeled out of the corner, reactivated, cracking eggs merrily alongside her sous chef. I heard we have you to thank for this, Kate said dryly. Her expression was complicated. I can't tell if you are happy about it or not, I said. She sighed. Neither can I. As I was shepherded around the office, enduring various last day of work rituals, I was accosted first by Arjun and then by Garrett. There's something you need to know, Arjun hissed as I was walking out of the HR debrief. There's something you need to know, Garrett whispered as I was prepping for the proprioception handoff. Garrett's in love with you. Arjun's in love with you. I told them both that I didn't have time for this bullshit, and if anybody wanted to ask a lady out, he could do it via text message or like a normal person. Message like a normal person. Across Johnson Street, I walked the length of the Task Acquisition Center, headed for the desk of Deborah Palmer Grill, where I would make my arrangements to purchase the refurbished arm. I peered across the rows and tried to spot the bearded chef, but of course he was gone. I'd made him obsolete. Confidence. DPG rose to meet me. You did it. She reached for my hand, giving it not a mere shake but a hearty rattle. She was grinning. I think I'm going to get a raise because of you. Andre was obsessed with the egg. I bent across her desk to reach the keyboard and tap my payment information into a digital form. Are you sure you don't want to stay? DPG said. The purchase order floated on her monitor. You could join me over on this side of the Townsend Street. We would make a good team. I looked back at the arms and the trainers. They were fewer than before. It wasn't just a bearded chef who was gone. General dexterity was making progress. I shook my head. I think I want to get a little labor in while there's still a chance. The Novice's Grace. That's the next chapter, chapter 24. The Novice's Grace. Did I skip some chapters? 1 minute. Okay, so now we're going to read the chapter, The Novice's Grace. I'm not going to say which chapter exactly it is because I sort of messed up the uh, order. So I said that the previous chapters that we read were 22, 23, and now this was 24th, but no, it's not 24th. I skipped a lot of chapters and a lot of pages in between. I'll get back to it and I'll post this video in order. But yeah, whatever. I'm gonna just read this chapter, then I'll sort out the order. Uh, Another Wednesday game, and with it, the final market preview. Soon our secret kingdom would open to the world. Every customer whom I'd ever seen was here this morning snapping photos to post on the expedient image based social network. This was their last chance to prove the world they had been one of the effect. I had forwarded Shaman's album along to Naz, and this morning he played it through the concourse. Stretched it out by echoes and songs of the mass were sweetly sad valedictory were they were perfect. There was at least one new customer on this, the last of the Wednesdays I recognized her, Charlotte Kingston. So, here you are, she said, a trio of acolytes clustered behind her, eyes roving the concourse warily. I recognized them too. From the kitchen at the Cafe Candide, they all noticed the Vitruvian at once. It was mixing placidly. They stared. That's quite a contraption, Kingston said. Is it really necessary? It's helpful, I said. She lifted a loaf from the ping pong table, faced the smiling crust squarely through her glasses. It looks different than I remember it. I offered her a taste, her contingent too. The acolytes chewed dutifully. Clingstone sniffed the bread raised her eyebrows, and took a nibble. It's very competent, she said. Do you bake anything else? Croissants? Pizza dough? I did not. You two remind me of Jim with his mystery starter. He had the Nophasis grace perpetually. It was maddening. She nibbled her sourdough sample and continued, sounding very casual. I have a proposal for you. Leave the robot behind. Come join us at Cafe Candide. It took her acolytes a moment to process what they'd just heard. When they did, their eyes went wide and they looked at me with bewilderment and horror. Kingston continued, bring the starter back to the cafe. You'll apprentice under Mona Lodge. You met her. There's no better teacher. I felt the disorientation of a generous offer that in no way lines up with everything you want to do. Like, with anything you want to do, like a promotion to senior alligator wrestler or an all expenses paid trip to Gary, Indiana. That's very kind of you, I said, but I have a business here. They're about to open the market. It's going to get a lot bigger. My reply pinged off Kingston's calm countenance without leaving a mark. She chewed the last of the sample and swallowed. Many young people wait years to be offered an apprenticeship at Cafe Candide. The smoldering hatred in the acolytes' gazes indicated they had recently been those people. I just don't see myself working in a restaurant, I said. Kingston's gaze was even. It's really quite a bit more than a restaurant. No, I said, thank you. Firmly, I've learned a lot on my own. She hummed, and it was almost musical. She looked from me to the Vitruvian to the starter in its crop, and back to me again. I wonder if it's true. Some days that bread of Jim's, it seemed almost to bake itself. I was going to protest, but Kingston turned and shepherded her acolytes back onto the yellow tape road. Thank you for the taste, she said, though I do think you should try pizza dough, a killer sourdough crust. Can your robot do that? More customers passed by. I was reaching into the postopon when I heard a voice I recognized. Louis, proprioception. It was Andre, linked arm in arm with an older man. What are you doing here? I was invited, he said. He started to laugh. I didn't expect you to see. I didn't expect to see a Vitruvian. This is the one you bought? She's one of your employees? The older man asked. He was very handsome, with an old sea captain look to him. Was, Gregor, this is Lois Clary, originally from Michigan. She worked with us on the control team for 14 months. Those flashcards were good. Andrea looked down at the concourse. You quit to work here? This is where I solved the egg problem, I told him. I wouldn't have been able to do it at the office. I bake bread now, and I'm going to put some things up for sale in the ARM OS marketplace. Andre smiled at that, but still seemed perplexed. He and his companion said farewell and continued along the yellow top road. I told them to sample the lembas cakes with an open mind. Watching them walk away, it occurred to me again. Could Andre be Mr. Marrow? They were both deeply impatient with the word as it was. Later, Charlotte Livingston and her acolytes passed by on their way out. The acolytes looked exhausted, worn down by novelty. Livingston spoke to them, and while they proceeded up onto the airfare, she returned to my workstation. I was afraid she was going to try again to recruit me, but she only thwopped a book down on the ping pong table. From Portacio's collection, she said. It was Candide. I read it when I was little younger than you, and it was a formative experience. That's the name of the cafe. I inspected the book. It was very slender. I think you might enjoy it, Kingston said. I wondered if this market was all silly gimmicks to her, or if she'd found anything at all that she actually liked. Yes, the mushroom grotto is interesting, isn't it? We are going to try those hen of the woods. Did you see the lembas cakes? Charlotte Kingston smiled and winced at the same time. It's a very impressive project, but I fear it's a bit too far ahead of the curve for Cafe Candide. The woman still has things to prove. But one day, who knows, maybe we'll start a diner with her little cathedrals. From Bio. Here's a story about how the starter came to us. The first of the mask before we were the mask was a man named M. who was pressed into service as a slave. He rowed aboard a ship crossing the sea. Which sea? The story does not specify, of course. There was a storm. The ship capsized, and this man M washed ashore onto a great rocky island that, even though it stood along many trade routes, was uninhabited because there was no place to grow anything. And so anyone who settled there would be dependent on others for their food. And that was a losing proposition in those times on that sea. M cursed his luck. His refuge was barren. There were pools of condensation in the rock, and he sipped from these while little crabs snatched at his nose. On the third day, starving, he considered his options, which were first, attempt to swim elsewhere, or second, throw himself off the great rocky island's tallest outcropping. Two kinds of suicide. Then he discovered a cave. Its opening was the narrowest crevice, invisible from any but the closest angle. He would not have discovered it if there had not been a small eminence inside, very faint, but in his starved state it drew him like a lure. Louis, you know the smell. I will write more later. So that's the end of the previous chapter. Now we are on to the next chapter. I'm sorry if I can't tell the chapter numbers because no chapter numbers are written here. I was just like making the numbers up as I was going. Um, yeah, but now that I've lost track, so um, this chapter is called deflation. I'm still trying to hit the 30 minutes mark. Um, so yeah, let's get into this chapter and then see how many more we can cover. As the Marrow Fair accelerated towards its launch, a crisis unfolded. First slow, then fast. To ensure I would make enough loaves to sell 5 or 6 days a week, I was testing myself with the Vitruvian slinging dough double time and the Phosphorus burners roaring nonstop. I ordered the fancy flour in bags larger than I'd known existed. To match all that flour to mix dough in the volume I required, I needed more starter. It felt like a kind of surrender, but I transferred the Clement Street starter from the ceramic crock into a white plastic tub. When I began to bake, I prepared a prodigious amount of floury paste for fuel. But in its new tub, the Clement Street starter grew slowly, more reluctantly. I put the music of the Mass on repeat and turned up the volume. It didn't have any effect. Worse, the loaves that resulted were deflated. Upon reflection, it had been happening for some time, just too gradually to notice. Now there was no denying it. The loaves were not as round as before, and when I tapped them on their backs, I heard unappetizing thuds inside. The crumb was different, heavy and dense. The smell was off. Less bananas, more acetone, and the faces that peered up from the crust were flat masks of resignation. I was asking a lot of the starter, I realized, but I was treating it well. I was offering it a daily feast of the finest wheat sugars. This was a partnership, a symbiotic relationship, and the starter had a job to do. The Vitruvian and I were doing ours. I tried to negotiate with it. What's the matter? What do you need? No gurgles, no puffs, no phenomena at all. The Clement Street starter seemed depressed. Each day the starter took twice as long to double in volume. I was accustomed to the mathematics of the exponential to the exponentiation working in my favor. Now I worried that it had turned against me. If this trend continued, there wouldn't be enough hours in a day to get what I needed for the day's loaves. The Marrow Fair's opening was approaching. I began to quietly freak out. It was possible I was overthinking it. The problem might be mundane. A search of gluten revealed that yes, starters sometimes lost their mojo. The customary recommendation was to throw it out and start over. But I couldn't do that. I wanted to bang on the keyboard. What if your starter was given to you by mysterious siblings from an unknown country, and what if it's irreplaceable? Naz at the coffee bar noticed my mood. This might be more than a cappuccino. This might be more than a cappuccino can fix, he said. I ordered one anyway, and while he was preparing it, I explained that my sourdough starter was exhibiting a pathology I couldn't diagnose. Nas nodded sagely. This thing. He clonked his espresso machine on his head. It's fantastic, but it's totally temperamental. I always struggle with it. You know who turned out to be the Marsopo whisperer Anita with the crickets. She rebuilds old motorcycles. He clanked the cup down into the saucer and slid it across the countertop. This place is a magnet for weirdo geniuses. Somebody at the Marrow Fair can help you. Just put a note in the newsletter. I composed my query, stared at it on my laptop screen for 10 minutes, then sent it to Horace for inclusion in the next day's dispatch. In the morning, Jenna found me at my workstation. I was sitting in the folding chair, waiting for a batch of dough to slowly rise. For once, her hair was down. It was impossibly thick, definitively a different substance than what was attached to my scalp. She was wearing a t-shirt, not her usual lab coat, and she seemed more relaxed than I'd ever seen her before. Maybe things were going well with Limbas. I saw your note in the newsletter, Jenna said lightly, and I have an idea. I could run your starter through the sequencer, find out what's in there. I got the sense she was just looking for reasons to use her amazing machine. I thought about the sequencing process as she had described it, the pulverization of the cells, the divination of their entrails. What good would it do to me to know about my starter's dead DNA? It was its living behavior I needed to understand. I'll think about it, I said. It's nice of you to offer. Thanks. Of course, tell me what you decide. And you should come over and try the new batch sometime. It's better. I think it's better. I almost there. Nothing was happening at my workstation. The dough was going to take a very, very, very long time. I rose from the folding chair. Can I try it now? Over at Jana Mitra's lab, I bit into one of the new lembas cakes. The the gluiness had improved, but there was a new flavor, deeply metallic. It tasted uncomfortably like blood. I winced, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She took a bite herself and cursed. Something changed. It wasn't like this last night. It's really hard what you're trying to do, I said. You're inventing something totally new. Everyone else here, we are trying things that are established and putting a twist on them. Even then, it's impossible. Trust me. Jenna's Jenna nodded absently. I think maybe the problem is the moldy, the molly, the molybdenum, ah, molybdenum, the molybdenum enzymes. I walked to Naz's coffee bar and requested a glass of water to wash the coppery flavor out of my mouth. Then sat at the long picnic table to check my email. Recipes to my replies to my query in newsletters were accumulating, and in their recommendations they were unanimous, univocal, unequivocal. Dr. Stephen Agrippa, they said, ask Agrippa. Agrippa the cheesemaker. Agrippa knows more about microbes than anyone. Agrippa upon the airfield. Agrippa with the goats. From view. So what's next? M wormed his way through the narrow crevice and found a scene from a dream. Inside the cave was forested with fungus, their stalks as thick around as trees, with fluttering ribs and wobbling tendrils. The wind across the crevice played a whistling song. Remember this. M knew the mushrooms could be deadly, but what choice did he have? He feasted, and guess what? They were great. The fruits of the caves had sustained him. Weeks later, a sharp-nosed ship ventured close enough to the great rocky island for him to signal, waving his arms atop the precipice from which he might before have jumped. When the ship approached, he climbed aboard and was immediately pressed into service, a slave once more. He told no one of the caves and its hidden sustenance. 5 years later, he had earned his freedom, and 5 years after that, he had acquired a ship of his own, slow and leaky, but large enough to carry not only his own small family, but also the families of men beside whom he had rowed and suffered. This part of the story feels true to me. So basically, this was Burek telling Louis Lewis about the origin of the sourdough, like from where the sourdough had first come. It's basically nature's enzymes somehow bottled up and kept for days and ages and just like cared after. And we're also seeing how Lewis is basically struggling with her sourdough starter. And this is basically a world of enzymes and microbes, and the author has actually taken like real life example and exaggerated it. And I was just like reading about the author and the book on Goodreads just last night, and I got to know that um, this author does this, the magical fantasy kind of a thing. Like he takes real things and exaggerates them, sort of like avant-garde of writing. So yeah, I do like this book. It's out of the box and different. Let's just read one more chapter, and then there'll be just like one more video. I'll actually read for 10 more minutes. Agrippa. Beyond the old hangars, there was the expense. So Agrippa is this guy that everyone is suggesting to go for the sourdough problem. Now let's see what this guy does. Beyond the old hangars, there was an expanse of abandoned airfield, cracked and overtaken by tall grasses. A line of low, rounded bunkers rose at the asphalt's edge, and beyond them it was just dark water. I carried a sample of the Clement Street starter in its original ceramic crock across the broken landscape, the marrow fair beneath my feet. The man and his alpaca were out there guarding their herd. I approached slowly, both of them watching me as I crossed the concrete. Stephen Agrippa, I called when was close enough. We met before? Never mind. I work in the market. I pointed dumbly to the ground. Everyone said I should talk to you. The man nodded slowly at this. I have something strange, I said. It's a sourdough starter, but it's not. Hey! A goat was gnawing on my pant leg. I danced away. Agrippa laughed, a high, echoing bark. Come on, he said. Bring yourself something strange. Don't worry about Hercules. He's cool. His voice was wry and reedy. He turned and ambled away. I followed, circling wide around the hungry goat and watchful alpaca, whose name was apparently Hercules. Agrippa led me towards one of the bunkers set deep into the ground, its rounded top thick with vegetation, inky green and rusty red. The bunker's face was a half moon of white. There was a ramshackle airstream set up next to it with an awning that extended to one side. In the shade of the awning, Agrippa reached into a plastic cooler and retrieved two bottles, both unlabeled. He cracked their caps with his molars. Want one? I accepted my beer from the master of microbes and spun the blank bottle. Homebrew? It's from algebra around the way. He motioned back towards the brewery, quintuple hopped. Experimental. I help him out sometimes. People say you are a microbe whisperer. He took a swig of his bottle, looked out across the water. They do say that. I try to discourage them, but then they ask me what I am, and I can never quite say it right. So then I just shut up. You make cheese? He made a deep jerked a thumb at the bunker behind him. That's the cheese cave. Used to hold nukes. He took another swig of beer, grinned, and now it holds some truly advanced technology. A nervous itch spread across my scalp. Is it safe to be here? Do you drive here in a car? I take a Carl's Ferry. Well, it's safer than that. I mean, is it radioactive? Everything's radioactive. It's fine. Mutation's a good thing. I had no idea he was serious or not. He seemed like the kind of person who cultivated that ambiguity, who reveled in it. Generally, I don't enjoy those kinds of people. I hefted the Clement Street charter in its crock and held it out to Agrippa for inspection. He eyed it, then me. Oh, I can't do anything about that. What? You think I'm a sourdough mechanic? You just you just drop it off? No, ma'am. I will tell you what I know. How you apply that knowledge to your particular technology, there is up to you. You keep calling it technology. Technology it is. Come on, I want you to see the cave. Inside the bunker, the air was clammy and dense, heavy with a ripe aromatic smell. It seemed to crawl up inside my nose and elbow, other odors away. The bunker was narrow but deep, deep enough at least that the light from the open door did not illuminate the back wall and instead only pettered out into darkness. Wire shelves ran straight down the long space, like an art school demonstration of perspective and foreshortening. The shelves were laden with huge wheels of cheese that I recognized from Ori's table at the Marrow Fair. They were veined with bright colors, blue and turquoise, flame orange, hot pink. Agrippa carried a basket under his arm as he walked slowly through the bunker, scanning up and down and like a value conscious shopper scurrying the shelves at a grocery store. If you sit here in the dark, he said abruptly, and it was no stretch to imagine him doing so, and wait a long time, you see yellow flashes. That's vitamin B2 fluorescing. And you are a 100% sure it's not dangerous. It's beautiful. That was not a satisfying response. We passed a shelf where a wheel of cheese had exploded into some kind of fungal overgrowth. Tall, mushroom like fruiting bodies rose up and swayed slightly in the air, disturbed by our passage. I sucked in a sharp breath. Is that there? I pointed. Is that all right? Agrippa noted. It was, oh, it's fantastic. An empire is rising, lifting up great works. He picked up a wheel on the next shelf, held it close to his nose, then he fished a tool out of his pocket, some kind of mental syringe, and plunged it into the wheel. He extracted a slender core sample, popped part of it into his mouth, offered me the other part. I hesitated for a moment and accepted it. Satisfied, he turned around and headed for the exit. Culture, he said. The word meant this. Making cheese before it meant that. Art and opera. And before it meant anything, it just meant working the land. That's a better definition. That's who we are. Not our music, our books. Psh, books, they're all dead. We are alive. We eat, we grow. But. Here's the thing, we are amateurs. We emerged back onto the airfield. I was happy to be out of the bunker. Amateurs, Agrippa repeated. Compared to what you just saw, this is the key to my cheese, to that beer, to your sourdough, to anything and everything. I'm going to say it. And you are going to nod like you get it, but you won't. Not yet. It doesn't come easy. He took a breath. In that cave, empires are rising and falling. There are battles underway, wars, more soldiers on both sides than in all the wars of human history combined. And they are struggling. They are taking territory, making it safe, building fortresses. He lifted the wheel he'd chosen out of his basket and hefted it. There is a saga in here to put our world history to shame. His eyes were a little defocused now, lost in the grandeur of his rant. In every wheel of cheese, there's a revolution, alliance, betrayal. Can you feel it? I told him the truth. I could not. No, you're honest. I appreciate that. Of course you can't. I couldn't at first. We're blind to it. But this is their world, not ours. And their stories are greater. I found. They are bacteria. They don't think or plan. They just exist. Just exist. They do things we only dream of. They are fecund and potent. They speak to one another with chemicals and light. They can form teams. Oh, the teams they can form. Millions strong, all working together perfectly. If we could cooperate like that, if we could even get close, we would have all of our problems solved. They can live at the bottom of the ocean. They can live in volcanoes. They can live forever. Well, my comrades below had sent me to the right person. This was a man who loved microbes. He looked at me, eye blazing. This is all I have to offer you. If you can understand this, if you can only hear what I'm saying but believe, then you'll know what to do with your starter. We were both silent a moment. Then ventured, can you at least give me a hint? He laughed. "Huh, sure. What am I saying? What I'm saying is, first you have to respect it. He spun his wheel of cheese around and sniffed it, sucking in a great deep breaths. Then he held it out, turned it all, turned it a degree either way, inspecting, and the look on his face showed more than respect. It showed awe. From view. On the great rocky island, M built a kingdom. His friends and family feasted on fruits of the cave, and they were well nourished. They built a long jetty, a place where ships could pause on their journeys across the sea to feed the sailors, mass brewed beer and baked bread. The fluttering, wobbling culture of the cave they kept secret. This is a pretty good story so far, but maybe you're wondering why haven't I heard of M's Great Rocky Island? Why is it not a wealthy maritime state? Why are Bio and his cousins hidden away in all the second story apartments of Europe? Because, of course, there was a problem. Their port was very successful, and the population of the Maz, we can call them that now, grew rapidly in just a few generations. They became beer drinkers and bread eaters themselves because the culture of the caves thrived nowhere else. But not even in other caves of the island. For a long time they wondered why. Most shocked, then a girl of the Maz, a genius, simply opened her ears. The whistling song across the narrow crevice was linked somehow to the life of the culture. Through experimentation, she determined the crucial tone and sequences. This is the origin of the songs that the Mask sing today, the songs on your CD. This girl became the governor of the Great Rocky Island, and she transformed it, bringing the culture out of the cave. Now the Mask had beer and bread and something else too. Sailors who tied up their ships and walked ashore to rest and trade were well fed and well treated, but they were not allowed behind the walls of the fortress in which the culture of the mass was propagated and the songs of the mass were sung. Behind those walls, the language of the mass grew in upon itself and lost its kinship with other languages. So here was Burek just continuing the story of the origin of mass. Agrippa continued. I'm going to read this one more chapter, uh, or maybe yeah, I'm just gonna leave it here. I'll not read this chapter. It's 41 minutes already. It's the book is just gonna come to an end. I think this will be the last video now. We've already covered all like, this much. Not this much. We have covered. Well, we have covered this much in this 40-minute video. Oh wow, I'm okay. Yeah, we'll cover this much more with this section, and then it may be two videos. I will know. But yeah, we're going to finish it very soon. So see ya.